Scanning for audio.
Hello and welcome to this episode of For Your Consideration, which this month is very sadly dedicated to my friend Helen, who was on my animation course, and she died just before we recorded this a week or so ago. So I'm going to dedicate this episode to her, and it seems fitting, although it's very sad, because this is an episode about animation, which I will be discussing with my fellow co-host, who is as ever... Hello.
Michael, hello. Yes, it's me. Same bloke as always.
And we are discussing the three earliest Wallace and Gromit films this month. Hello to everybody in September, going back to school if you're in that world, or sending your kids back to school if you're in that world.
Yeah.
I think mine are on an inset day on the day that this comes out. But we're recording this just before our episode on Blake 7 drops, so we look forward to hearing your reaction to our chat about Blake 7, which was August's episode, will be August's episode. And literally the 2 days before this goes out, Michael and I will be in Hooverville.
Yeah, very much looking forward to that.
We may have gone live briefly to do some chat. So you may have seen us very recently before you're listening to this in your ears.
Yeah, but that's all in our future.
That's in our future, your past.
Yeah.
But yes, today we're talking plasticine.
We are.
And
now,
filmmaking.
This was your choice. So,
this was my choice, yes.
As always, same question as always. Why this choice?
Let's just put some dates on this. So, A Grand Day Out, 1989, was the culmination of Nick Park's master's final project, which he started in 1983. So it took 6 years to come to fruition, partly because he left the National Film Television School, got a job at Aardman, and obviously had to do stuff for Aardman, and then was able to finish this as an Aardman project. So that came out in 1989. I didn't see that then. I was 5. That was on Channel 4, but I didn't see it at the time. So the first I was properly aware of Wallace and Gromit was The Wrong Trousers, 1993, Christmas 1993, on the BBC. And then 2 years later we got A Close Shave, which was shown at Christmas 1995, and then repeated on my birthday in 1994. Oh, no, not 94, 1996. Sorry. The second terrestrial broadcast of A Close Shave was my birthday in 1996. I remember that. So I saw Wrong Trousers... as did a big chunk of the nation, I think, on BBC, Christmas 1993, and it was amazing. I was thinking about this earlier. Those 2 months, November and December 1993, have turned out to be very significant for my future, because November 1993 was Dimensions in Time, so my first watching of Doctor Who. Followed in December by watching Wallace and Gromit. And I guess I was already interested in animation because, a lot of kids' TV is animated. And obviously Wallace and Gromit is not necessarily specifically aimed at kids. There's a lot of humour in there that is aimed at adults. And certainly a lot of the sort of filmmaking style of it is something that you don't really appreciate as a kid. The sort of film noir of The Wrong Trousers, all that kind of stuff. So it's very much a kind of family thing. But yeah, I wanted to be an animator, I think, probably as a result of this. And obviously I got to be an animator for some portion of my life. Mostly while I was a student studying animation, but I think I can trace a lot of it back to this. And I'm obviously this is an audio only podcast, but I'm going to hold this up to Michael. So this book
is a great book.
Cracking animation. So this book really did change the course of my life. So I bought Cracking Animation, which is a sort of history of animation and then sort of how Aardman animated stuff.
Yeah.
And I had a book token from my nan for 10 quid.
And that was a lot of money back in the 90s.
Well, no, that would have been Christmas 2000. 2000 possibly? 2000? No, yeah, 2000. It would have been 2000. And the book was 20 quid, but it was half price in a shop. So I had 10 quid, and I was like, I'll buy that. And I was doing my A-levels. I was headed down a route that was probably going somewhere sciencey because I was doing maths and physics and design technology. But I picked that up Christmas of my year 12, and it suddenly was like, oh yeah, no, this thing that I've been wanting to do, sort of have dabbled in as a sort of amateur. This is a thing that people do, and I guess I knew that people did that, but I'd never really contemplated the possibility that I could do that.
We were never those people.
No. But anyway, so I read that book and I was like, oh, maybe I could do this. And so I then sort of took a sort of slight left turn, really. And I spent a lot of the rest of year 12 and then some of year 13 producing a short film, which was a day in the life. It was sort of inspired by sort of the Truman Show, in that it was supposed to be like a day in the life of this guy who was always being filmed, and he was in the bathtub and he had a robot butler, and then this thing came out of the bath and ate his robot butler, and peril, so that was it, and I took that to 3 different universities, 2 of whom gave me offers, and I went to Sunderland to study animation. And I guess that can all be traced back to watching Wallace and Gromit and loving it, and rewatching it ad nauseum. Anytime it was on, we probably taped it. I got the DVD at some point. I now have the Blu-ray. Was very excited in my final year at uni when the Wallace and Gromit movie came out. So that's it's just a big part of my DNA, really. Yeah. What about you? What was your encounter with Wallace and Gromit? Right.
Okay, so let me see. There's a few things that need to be gone into, but they're all different points. One of them is I did do work experience in Aardman in Bristol, which was incredible, while I was on my degree. So I didn't do particularly well in my A-levels, but I did do art and a few other things. But then I ended up doing a BTEC OND in theatre production, where I did makeup and things like that. Now, at the same time, I had friends who were doing much better than me at college. So I need to name check some people who I have not seen for getting on 30 years. So there was Alan Towns and his then girlfriend Laura. And without those 2 people, my music tastes would be completely different. My outlook on the world would be quite different. And there would be so much different. But I'm at Laura's house, probably waiting for Alan to turn up, and she says, "Oh, we taped something off the TV last night. You've got to see this. There's a brilliant bit with mice and glasses." And I went, "What do you mean?" And she went, "Oh, you'll just love this." Right. So we put it on, and I remember, because I'd missed it. Now I've got a memory of it being taped from Channel 4 as part of one of their animation festival things. And I can't place this time-wise. I'm thinking it's sort of 1990 or 91. So it's quite early on from when it was. But I can't do that anyway. So they do that. But they're the people who went, "Oh my God, you love animation." It was like, yeah, I do love animation, but that was incredible. And it like you, it like blew my mind. It was going, how does this exist in the same world as like your Saturday morning cartoons? And there was the 3D animation that I had adored and loved as well. I'd grown up watching Morph. I'd grown up watching a lot of other stuff. The Ray Harryhausen. Oh God, I loved Ray Harryhausen stuff, right? And all of that. So I was kind of steeped in anyway because of the big geek that I was. But this just spoke to me. It was like, oh my God, it's so English, and it's and it's northern. How does, I mean, obviously it's south to me, but it's northern, and it's animated. And oh my God, could I do this? And it hadn't even occurred to me. It was like, yes, I know I can do this. I've made stop frame animation stuff as experimental tiny films. And then also they found at Sunderland a course where they did three-dimensional communication and design, which was building props for film and TV and that kind of thing. So I did that, but halfway through that, well, it was only a 2-year course because that was an HND. I thought, I'll catch up with everyone now that I've done a theatre course for 2 years where I did theatrical makeup, and I was also helping out people who were on the animation and filmmaking course at Northumbria University, people like John Fletcher and a few others, and I was doing their theatrical makeup for their monster effects. So I was building props for them at the same time. And I thought, this is brilliant. This is what I want to do. And I applied to go to Northumbria after I'd finished the HND. And luckily I got funding. So I had the HND. And then I had the full degree. They said, you can just do the 1-year top-up where you do the filmmaking. And I was like, yeah, but I'll miss out so much. Can I do the full year, 3 years? And they went, actually, you can. It's not a problem. That would not happen now. I'll put my hands up and say that would not happen. But that's what happened. They said, yeah, you can do that. So I did full 3 years, and I was way, way behind all of the people I'd gone to school with. They'd left university like 3-4 years before me. So I was one of the older people on the course, and this was animation at Northumbria University, and it was just great. But we did the classic things, the squash and the stretch and things like that. Mm-hmm. But I used, in 1986. We go to Cardiff, okay, and there's a talk by Aardman, and I think it's the bloke who run Aardman. I don't think Nick Park was there, and he's saying that we were just getting on with our lovely little documentary series that we'd do the audio recording, and I'm thinking, write that down, do audio recording separately, and then we'd interview people, and then we'd lip sync, but they were all a bit depressing, to be honest. They were all people talking about how cold things were, or they couldn't afford things, and then we'd animated over them and their times in the war, and then there was flashback sequences, and then we met Nick Park at a festival.
I'm just going to hold up the DVD that has all of those films on it.
Yeah, exactly, right. And I'm just enraptured by this thing. Now, I know it's 1996 because me and Chris Ellis go back to the hotel room and watch the Paul McGann movie. Because that dates it perfectly. So I'm watching Paul McGann's movie in Cardiff, which is a weird Doctor Who crossover thing. Anyway, so that inspires me. And then they say, but then we met Nick, and he was making people laugh at animation festivals, and we thought, we want a piece of that. Yeah. And then we thought, I wonder what we can teach him. And then he turned up and he thought, I wonder what he can teach us.
Yeah.
Because he understood movement and things like that. So Nick Park's a brilliant inspiration as well to me. Mm-hmm. And that's why I went away and I went, right, okay, let's make a shopping list. And I went away and I contacted, for my second year film, like John Pertwee, and he wrote back and went, come round to my house for free and do this. The way that Nick Park had written to Salas and gone, can you do this? And he got 50 quid for this film, and I got mine for free, so I got a better deal. But anyway, so I had this. That predated because he was already dead by that point. So I'd recorded that the year earlier, but obviously I'd done lots of research and things like that, because you do. And then I learned animation. So that was the second year film. Was that in my third year film? I was interviewing Stephen Fry and Ed Edmondson and Josie Lawrence and what was it, 7 or 8 quite and really big names for the time, comedian wise. And then like the Anna Aardman, I did that. But my work experience in the second year was to visit Aardman, and they took me into one room, and sorry, I'll just blow my own trumpet at this point. So they're showing you around. And it's a nice little talk, and they go, and this is the room where they make stuff. And oh my God, sorry, I've missed out McKinnon and Saunders where they do the puppetry, and I love making 3D stuff so much. But anyway, so I go into the room, and they're all building stuff, and then the guy says, don't go in there. And he points, he says, you can't go in there. In fact, don't even look at the door. Do not go in there. That's the chicken room. But I shouldn't even have said the chicken room. Oh. It's too secret, right?
So they were
and
in
one
the
day,
early stages of Chicken Run at that point.
yeah, very early. And I did have to act as a bit of a gopher at that point. So I got to meet Nick Park for about 10 seconds when I took him a letter from reception that was very important. And I met him, and I was just like, "Hello, are you?" I didn't even have to go, "Are you Nick Park?" It was just like, "Mr. Park, yes, I've been sent to give you this," and that was it. That was my entire meeting.
That was your entire interaction with
That
Nick
was
Park.
even
Wow.
shorter than my meeting with Jerry Anderson. It was ridiculous, right? so that was my only meeting with him in the chicken room as well.
That sounds about the same length as my meeting with Matt Smith, which was you were very good in that. Shake hand. Off he went.
Bye. Yeah, it was like.
Yes.
But inside, I was just like, Kevin and Perry go large. I was like, "Oh, hello, Mr. Park, hello." I was like, that was ridiculous. So while I was there, they put me in a studio and they said, right, and they gave me 2.5 pieces of orange plasticine and a tiny bit of white and a tiny bit of black, and they said, make a morph. Here's a resin morph. You need to extrude them because you don't just push them together and make separate arms and legs. You have to push all the plastic together and then pull them all out. Otherwise, there's
a thing in here that says that's what they do. Everybody who comes has to make a morph.
Well, that's what they did.
And they show you how to do it in the book. So
and then they put me in a studio with a U-matic recorder, and they said, right, make him walk. And I had him walking, and then they said, right, now make him trip up halfway through and things like that. So we were doing that. And that was great. That was an absolutely superb time of my life. It was brilliant. I was by myself. So that was brilliant. So Aardman's been such a great part of my life. So without Laura going, there's a brilliant thing with mice with glasses on.
Yeah.
I probably wouldn't have done Sunderland. And then I ended up going back to Sunderland in the 2000s to do my MA. But I wouldn't have gone to university to do that. I wouldn't have. So it's that somebody putting the glasses on is just incredibly important. And when I was watching it back, I was going, this took 6 years to make. That level of passion. I mean, all right, it's taken me that long to write some of my books, but that level of passion to try and get other people involved and get it all going and is great. But then there's so many hints and tips that both of us have picked up over the years and gone, right, we'll get the voices from this and then we'll put them with that. We'll make sure we've got the signed releases and all this business. And we've really done things by the book. But the audio was recorded in 1984 when even I was 12.
I was only just born.
Exactly.
But this is the thing, like you say, by the book. I mean, literally, I was the page of Wallace mouths in the book was like mind blowing. You know, you're just like, oh, so you hack the mouth off, you put another one on, you smooth it back into place. That makes so much sense of how you do it. And then I created my own. I think my character was called Roger, and I had my own box of Roger mouths.
Yeah,
that I would.
The Stephen Fry bit in my degree film. He's got he's a stick figure, but he's got about 30 different facial expressions and mouth shapes that just match that, so that I could swap them out and put them in, because it's the Jack Skellington interchangeable face things. Yes. Where that's why you could buy at the time thousands of heads for 500 quid, because they made there's so many heads.
All the heads. I mean, I do feel it's a shame, you know, when you see the more recent Aardman films and you see the behind the scenes and they've just put the mouths on, and then they clearly CGI the gaps out. You know. Yeah. Whereas obviously before you were just like, no, you smooth the plasticine in, then you have to hack the mouth off and try again. But it was just sort of formative, really. Like, this is the, and I did a film when I was the geek camp that I used to go on, which we'll come back to in a future podcast because I've got something from that I want to do. But I made an orange rocket.
Nice.
It was much more angular, but you know, it was basically me ripping off the rocket from A Grand Day Out. And there's just so much of that, like you say, that's part of our DNA. And I think if you said to the average person on the street, can you name a British animator? Yeah. They would either be able to, they would either not be able to, or they would say Nick Park. And I remember when I was thinking about going to do animation at university, people would ask me, "Oh, are you going to be the next Nick Park?" Like, that was their touchstone. Yeah. And I arrogantly said, "I'm going to be the Luke Harrison."
Yeah. Well, we all did that.
And obviously I've not made my name in animation, but you know, and talking about meeting people, I mean,
that's the upsetting bit. Sorry, for me, I've still got the audio from meeting John Pertwee, because he recorded 2 for me. I did one that's on YouTube somewhere. I think it's had about 6 views.
Yeah.
And the other one I've still got, and I've never got round to recording it.
We should make that happen.
Well, the thing is, what kit would I have? Because let's face it, let's put our hands fit up. We got into animation at the time when it was a really bad idea to be in animation because everyone went, "Hey, I've bought some computers, lads. We'll do it over here." And we were like learning to weave in the same year that the jacquard looms were wheeled out. And they went, "We do this now."
Well, I suppose my degree...
neither of us bothered learning the computers. I know I did.
Oh no, I did.
Was very...
No, I did.
I was. Oh, I wish I had.
I did. I did. My degree was basically the first semester was, like you say, principles. So squash and stretch was the first week. Anticipation was the second week. And it was we'd go in on Monday, and the lecturer would be like, "This is the principle this week. This is what we're doing. Go away, and next Monday when I come in, you all need to be showing me a 10-second-ish animation on the screen." And we basically, but we had a computer system, so we had a rostrum camera, attached to the computer system, and there's a little keypad where you could press for 1 or 2
Can I
frames.
just say we were still using U-matic?
I'm sure
our camera had a rollback with
Yeah, no, ours was a mini DV cam, but we didn't shoot to tape. We shot directly onto the computer with the little keypad, and
nice.
we shot twos for everything. So just for people who don't know the terminology, if you're shooting ones,
I'm just nodding away, going, "Oh, of course, yeah." And you're right.
If you're shooting ones, you're shooting one picture for every thing that you do, and so if you're shooting on video, you're shooting 25 pictures per second. If you're shooting film, you're shooting 24 pictures per second. If you're shooting twos, you take 2 pictures, and so you're then only doing 12 frames a second or 12.5 frames a second, which means you only have to do half the number of pictures or half the number of movements. And a lot of Wallace and Gromit is shot on twos, with the exception of something like the train chase. That's all ones, as far as I'm aware.
The train chase, it says ones, but they also used an extended shutter release exposure.
Yes,
that's the word I'm looking for.
To get the blurred background.
So they're shooting on film.
Yeah, they're shooting on film. Yeah,
so it's an extended aperture. Sorry, right. If we've lost anyone, you know what? I'm not.
No,
sorry,
it's fine. We're just geeking out over the technical.
I literally don't care that I might have lost someone because this is something that you kind of repress it in your everyday life.
Yeah.
That your love for your disappointment that you're not doing it for a living, you have to knock on the head once you're past 40. But once you're past 50, it just grinds in your head. Like, oh my God, you sat there. Sorry, please don't let anyone from work hear me. But you're sat there cleansing data and you're going, I know this is important and I know this is potentially life-saving work. But part of me just wants to be messing with plasticine right now.
Yeah. Well, I'm fortunate enough that I get to work in the video production sphere.
Yeah.
I'm employed to make video 3 days a week for a charity, and then I work for myself the rest of the time making video. And during the pandemic, which was my first year in the job that I currently have, I got to make an animation. We were going to be sending out these boxes called imagination boxes for the supporters of the charity. And it was going to be like a quarterly thing, and I basically animated the first one. So it came, I had it plopping through the door, and then I picked it up, and then I opened it, and then stuff came out of the box, and then there was some rice somewhere that animated the logo of the charity. So I do get to dabble, and there's a lot of crossover in terms of the way that you animate stuff in Premiere within video editing, some basic stuff. I mean, I get to move graphics around and stuff.
Yeah, I mean,
but I don't do the plasticine stuff anymore, and as much as I love
I
it,
say plasticine,
hard
but
work.
what I actually liked was the skeleton stuff. Was the expanded foam latex skill, basically the stuff that McKinnon and Saunders were making.
Yeah.
Like I know Mars Attacks was CGI'd, but that's only because it was going to cost them too much money and too much time to do that 3D animated puppet. But we're talking.
But they made the original puppets for Mars Attacks, right?
Well, they did. I've held one because they did the camera tests with them.
Yeah.
And they were trying. They were trying while I was working at Cosgrove Hall, because McKinnon and Saunders was in a little office next door. They were trying to work out how to mass produce molds from masters that weren't degrading, by duplication. So ideally you would have created, say, 10 resin copies and then produced 10 resin copies from those 10 resin copies. So everything was only second generation.
Right.
But every time you made something from a resin, from a silicon mold, you'd take a tiny bit of the silicon mold with it. So you are still degrading, although you're making a first generation copy. Obviously, the first one's going to be the most best. So they were trying to work out how to make, 1,000 Martians.
They had to make a lot of them, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and they were just like, because everyone was just so desperate not to do it with CGI.
Yeah.
To stick with it, but then you ended up with like your Frankenweenie and all that other stuff. So Manchester and Bristol are the bedrocks of our world, and now I believe there's an Aldi where Cosgrove Hall was, because that was the only place that did 2D and 3D animation. Because upstairs they did the drawn stuff. It was such a nice sleek room, but downstairs, oh god, that was so good. You had the big studio, and then you had and then you had the big workshop. And I felt so at home. My mate John got us in there, and I've got I've only got a couple of things that I kept from the time there. I was only there for for sort of less than a year, but that was so good. That was where I met Jerry Anderson.
I'm jealous of all this stuff because I got to visit Blue Zoo, who make Alpha blocks and all that kind of stuff, and I got to visit Espresso where they make the Frosties commercials.
Yeah.
That was sort of my work. It was part of the courses. You had to arrange. It was sort of like Can You Adult, basically. You had to arrange a trip to London and see all these different places, and you had to do it all by yourself. And it was great. It was great fun. And then we had a visiting speaker from Aardman whose name was Lisa McCarran, and I remember this because she sounded exactly like Janet Street Porter. And we had a whole lecture from her. Sorry, you just took a sip. That was the wrong thing.
I did take a sip of tea.
I'm Lisa McCarran, and I work for Aardman Animations. And she'd brought with her a proper Gromit. So this Gromit got passed around. I was like, I'm holding an actual screen-used Gromit. Yeah. And then one of Snap, Crackle or Pop. I don't know which, because obviously they used to make the Rice Krispies commercials. And she then looked at our work behind the scenes and chose which of us from the course would get to make this animation that was going to be part of this symposium that was happening, which was great fun. And that was CGI. So as I was saying, my course went from all stuff on paper. I had a stack of paper massively high by the end of my first year because I then did my
day one is make a flick book. And then,
exactly, yeah.
Then Zoetrope. So you go through the history of it all as well.
Well, I checked out Weybridge's book from the library so many times. Because he was the pioneer in the late 19th century who did all the walk cycles.
So here's my last bit of crappy trivia. Okay, so years later, I'm living in Yorkshire. I've got Verity. I'd been a stay-at-home dad for ages. I'm trying to get back into some form of employment, and I get a job. There's a list of places I've wanted to work in the world, and Cosgrove Hall and Aardman were on the list, and so was the Bradford Media Museum. The only place left for me to work is the BBC off that list. That's it.
Right.
That my whole list's been done apart from that, because I'll never get to work for like Universal or anywhere like that. Although, to be fair, once the park opens in this country, I'd be bloody good at teaching them how to be good staff. But anyway, no, trust me, I know their films, right? But what I'm saying is, after the fire, where a lot of Aardman's props were destroyed, there's not a lot of Gromits left, and there's not a lot of original stuff. But on, I think, the second floor of the Media Museum, at the back, there's a surviving set. It's quite an old animation display, but there's a surviving set of Wallace and Gromit from the Close Shave, and there's some original props. And every day when I'd go into work, because I just used to be a gallery host, and then I used to help out at the BFI movie cinema history thing section, booking people in and recommending old TV. I mean, me recommending old TV. If that's not a dream job, what is? Right. So, but then I was a gallery host, and every day I would go in 10 minutes early, and I'd go and see Wallace and Gromit just to pay homage to the little plasticine guys who survived. So that's it, basically. They've always been there, yeah.
So I went to Bradford. I must have gone as a kid, and then I went there every year as a student because it was then where the Bradford Animation Festival was. and it was where I then heard that Scream of the Shalka was going to be shown. So
I did
came
not know
back.
this.
Well, so the first 3 episodes of Scream of the Shalka were shown at Bradford, not on the IMAX, on the on the regular cinema screen.
Yeah.
The first 3 episodes were shown there between the webcasts of episode 2 and 3. So episodes 1 and 2 had already been webcast online, but sometime in the week between 2 and 3, they webcast. They had the 3 episodes up to that point. Paul Cornell was there to do a Q&A, and I actually met him in the foyer because I recognised him from Doctor Who magazine. So I was I was skulking around, and I saw him come in, and I was like, "Oh, hi, Paul, hello," and so we had a nice little chat. He didn't know me from Adam, and then
Paul's always nice to everyone. That's fine.
They had a screening. They also had a screening of The Horns of Nimon.
Okay, interesting choice.
They
picked cool.
Well, so this was the thing. So I knew Horns of Nimon's reputation. I believe I had won, because the BBC website used to do those competitions to win Doctor Who stuff before Doctor Who came back. So it was just for a time. I had won the VHS of The Horns of Nimon, because I happened to enter all the competitions, and that was the one that I won. And I knew its reputation. I'd seen it, and I was like, And then I watched it with a tiny group of normal people in the cinema in Bradford, and everybody laughed.
Are you sure they were normal?
Well, I mean,
I'm just thinking.
It struck me that I was the only kind of hardcore fan at this event.
Right. Okay. Yeah. An event that's got Paul. Yeah. Okay.
Anyway, no. So the Horns of Nimon was a separate screening, kind of earlier in the day.
Oh, anyway. Got you. Yeah.
And then it was and then they had the
so people
screening.
Were laughing. Were you offended, or did you just think, "I'll"?
No, and I just thought, "Oh, this works," and obviously I've seen people say that if you treat Horns of Nimon as a panto, but obviously because it was broadcast over the sort of Christmas New Year period, it works, and I love. I mean, and Tony Cross of this occasionally of this podcast loves Horns of Nimon. As well, and it was great. It was just lovely to see, and it's weird to kind of go, which Doctor Who stories have you seen on the big screen? Well, that was one of them.
Nice.
And then they showed Shalka, and obviously I saw episode 3, but ahead of the rest of the country. And Paul Cornell did a Q&A, and it was great. And obviously at that point we didn't know, or maybe we did know. I forget. At some point during that time, they then announced that Doctor Who was coming back properly. Yeah. But anyway, so it all links up, doesn't it, Michael?
It does, yeah.
But we've just basically waxed lyrical about animation for
But you know what? I don't think
an hour.
anyone listening to this is going to mind. I don't.
Well, I hope not. But we should talk about the films in question. So
yeah, right, okay.
And I'm just going to say the reason I haven't included Curse the Were-Rabbit is that's a whole film, so that's a whole other podcast.
Yeah.
And I haven't included A Matter of Loath and Death because I don't like it. Simple as.
I'll be honest
really.
with you. Until you sent me the films, I didn't even know it existed.
You didn't know it existed? Okay.
No. I knew Curse of the Were-Rabbit existed.
Yeah.
And I knew Vengeance Most Foul next year was in production. Right?
Yeah.
But
did you watch A Matter of Loath and Death?
No, I was literally about to before tonight.
Okay.
So I'd watched the other because I wanted to hear what the new Wallace was like.
Well, so that's still Peter Sallis,
right? Okay.
So as far as I'm aware, there's been some other shorts over the years. There was Cracking Contraptions, which was in the 2000s. That's all voiced by Peter Sallis. There's a guy who's officially replaced Peter Sallis. I think he did some stuff for the Proms.
Ben Whitehead.
Ben Whitehead, yeah. So he's the new Wallace. And I think he has done some commercials, maybe like where Wallace and Gromit are in some.
Ah, right.
I think that he's definitely done something. But Vengeance Most Foul, which is coming up this Christmas, which is the sequel to The Wrong Trousers, that's the first kind of proper thing with him. So it will be interesting to see, because obviously Peter Sallis's voice is very unique, recognisable. He is him.
Everyone can do a comedy take on it, but actually sounding spot on like him, that's going to be a challenge.
Exactly. Anyway, so I like Curse of the Were-Rabbit, but that's a whole other podcast. It would have been asking you to watch the equivalent of 2 movies worth.
Yeah.
And I don't really like Matter of Loath and Death. I have tried, but I don't really like it.
Well,
and it kind of comes like
I
it comes kind of
must
later.
admit, at various times in my life, there's been times when I'd put all 3 of them on a videotape and I'd just sit down and watch all 3 of them.
Yeah.
depending on who I was with. So I'd watched those so many times that I just felt very comfortable just going, that's not a problem. So,
but this was the first time you'd seen them on Blu-ray, right?
Yeah.
And
incredible.
they look so... if you haven't seen them in HD, because they were shot on film, and the transfers are lovely, the 5.1 mixes are lovely. So if you can get a hold of the Blu-ray and you've got the sound system, go for it.
Well, I must admit, I'm very grateful for it, because I was watching it, but I was seeing stuff, and that's one of those things. I know animation takes so long, so everyone gets to put their heart and soul into it, and extra gags, and there's always extra gags. But you've seen these for 30 odd years, and you're still seeing new gags. I'm still seeing slightly. All right, in the first one, there's a bit where you can actually go, okay, so there's a thumbprint on Wallace's nose in this scene.
Oh, I mean, there's so many thumbprints that you can see.
Especially in the first.
You can't.
In the first film, especially because Wallace's head is a bit different, but then he evolves, and it's not.
I mean, that's the other thing is you can kind of tell which bits were made first in A Grand Day Out. You can kind of go, oh, that bit was made while he was at film school, because as you say, Wallace sort of changes even through the film. And Gromit looks different in the first one, which is fine. I mean, it kind of works.
There was a guy at university who didn't like the Wallace and Gromit stuff, and he came to me and he went, you know that Wallace and Gromit, Gromit, and I went, yeah. He went, right, the dog brain in Inspector Gadget, same dog, and it was like, okay, is that your entire argument? That there's a dog that looks a bit similar in a different animated thing, who's clever? I mean, okay then.
You'll know this. I'm assuming that Gromit was originally going to be a cat, and he was going to have Peter Hawkins' voice.
I didn't know about the voice.
And the
I know in Europe he's been dubbed with a voice in various.
IMDb lists Peter Hawkins as the voice of Gromit. So somebody's clearly got that bit of information and gone, I'm going to put it here, and you're like, well, no, he didn't actually. Whether Nick Park ever got round to recording, I don't know. The story that I've read, I think it's in the book, is that, and again, this is one of the ones where you know that he did this at film school, is the scene where Wallace is sawing the door in half, and he saws through the trestle table, and he goes, and he has to get Gromit to come and replace him. Nick Park says that was the moment where he realised, because at that point Gromit's head's down, and so you can't see him talk. He'd have to kind of get it. Anyway. And he realised that there was so much expression, because obviously Gromit communicates so much without speaking. There's so much going on with that face. There's so much skill in the animation. But he said it was that moment he was like, well, he doesn't need a voice.
Right.
But yes. But Peter Hawkins, he of Daleks and Bill and Ben fame, would have been the voice of Gromit.
Nice.
But yeah, so let's briefly talk plot. So the first one is basically Wallace and Gromit, bank holiday, build a rocket, go to the moon to eat cheese, and come across a vending machine.
That's another reason that everyone thought I'd love this. Cheese. I am renowned in this entire universe for being the man who'll eat all the cheeses. I even created an animated series called Cheese World and pitched it to Cosgrove Hall. You
know that Wallace and Gromit inadvertently saved Wensleydale?
No, but I can imagine people going, I'll try that.
The Wensleydale Creamery apparently was going out of business. And then
it's not a great cheese. It doesn't melt well.
I mean, I've never eaten it, so...
I'll get you some.
But because Wallace mentions Wensleydale, suddenly everybody wanted Wensleydale, and literally the business was saved by Wallace liking Wensleydale.
Brilliant.
Not even Wensleydale. And then the second two are a bit more sophisticated, but you've got Penguin.
A bit? My God, they're incredible.
Okay, I mean, yes. I mean, just the level of animation, as you say. I mean, it's it's a different level, isn't it? Like the kind of animation we saw as a kid was stuff that was churned out at a rapid pace because they needed however many episodes of a show, and there's when you compare them, you're just like there's just a lot less movement going on,
Oh, absolutely. I mean, right, okay, you've got your basic.
And then Wallace and Gromit, you're like, no, this is just there's always movement, there's always stuff going on. The camera's doing interesting stuff,
Yeah, I mean, we could do a whole episode about Saturday morning cartoons, which no longer exist. But my favourite, by far, is Ulysses 31, which I would.
I've never heard of that.
Oh my God, I would. It's where Space Goat came from. At some point, it's a whole different thing. But basically, it's a retelling of all the Greek myths set in the 31st century. It's incredible. One full season, beginning, middle, end, done, right? It's brilliant. But then we also had stuff like Dogtanian and the Three Muskehounds, which was...
Yes.
Look, if it was in twos,
One,
you were lucky.
For one and all for one.
Please, oh my God, no.
Willy Fogg? Did you have Willy Fogg?
Yes, 80 Days Around the World.
Yeah.
Yep, the lot, right.
Yeah.
Got all them.
Yeah.
Right, but, like you said, churned out. But then we had, and let's not go into the whole where it came from and all the original cartoons and all the stuff that was cut, but Battle of the Planets. I would run home from school to watch that. Now, you'll have missed that, but that's fine.
No, I didn't see that.
Because there's a whole Seven's Arc 7 storyline, and I'm not even going to bring that for your consideration at any point, right? But that's a whole nother storyline. But that's the animation we had. 3D animation for me was your was the Cosgrove Halls, but the big one was the Toad of Toad Hall Wind in the Willows animated TV series, which was that had it had Del Boy, it had
David Jason as Toad,
David Jason, the voice casting was
Peter Sallis was
Sallis
in it.
again,
Michael Hordern.
Oh my God, Michael Hordern as Badger.
And then Truckers,
yes, which they never made Diggers and Wings. Oh my God, I love Truckers. I read the beginning of Truckers for an English exam. It was brilliant. I can do it now.
But you've got
Arnold Brothers established 1905.
Arnold Brothers 1905. Heavens preserve us. You've got Nigel Plaskett, who was a stalwart of Cosgrove Hall. You've got Joe McGann.
Yes. But we're forgetting the big one, Danger Mouse.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah. Danger Mouse.
And the reboot is not bad. The reboot is
I've heard.
Total perfect.
Yeah.
It's a perfect extension.
But
it's
let
as
me
good
throw
as
into
you
the
remember
mix.
the original being. Yeah.
Wombles.
Yeah.
Paddington.
Yes.
So here's my claim to fame. In my final year at uni, I was taught by Sheila Graber, who did the cutout animation for Paddington.
Oh, very.
And she was based in the Northeast. She would draw the cutouts in the Northeast.
Was she?
She would post them. She would post them down to Ivorwood, who would then integrate them with the animated.
And the only reason they
bear.
were 2D is because they spent so much money on the bear they couldn't afford to make everyone else 3D.
Yes,
right,
she was
okay,
great. I loved her. Anyway, so
trying to get
let's
us
go back to
on
Wallace and
track,
Gromit.
we're going to be finishing quite soon, and I want to make this as good as possible.
You've got the film noir. You've got the penguin, who's a chicken. No, he looks like a chicken, and everybody. I mean, the comedy of it's the Clark Kent thing. He puts the glasses on, you don't recognise he's Superman. Puts the glove on his head, everybody doesn't recognise he's a penguin.
Right. I've been reading the biography of Canine Stole My Wrong Trousers. That one,
Bob Baker. Yes,
I've been reading Bob Baker's one, and I skipped through to the bits about Aardman, and basically, him and Nick Parker were left alone in a room. I think, and he suspected that there was a mirrored class going on, when they were so that he could just see if they got on, and they did get on very well because they had a love of other stuff. But again, he was making other stuff at the same time, and it was going. Oh, I didn't finish my story earlier. I'm sorry. Right, so I'm being shown round Aardman. Right, they take me to the kitchen where all of the awards are, and they go, "That's the Oscar. You can hold it if you want." So I pick them both up, both Oscars at this point, and I hold one in each hand. And the guy looks at me and he goes, "No one picks them both up." And I went, "Okay then," and I put them back because I had ideas above my station.
So this was the Oscar for Creature Comforts and The Wrong Trousers.
Yeah.
I mean, I love the fact that the reason that the Grand Day Out doesn't have an Oscar is because Nick Park beat himself to the Oscar by winning it for Creature Comforts, which came out in the same. Just the level of creativity of that man. The fact that he had two Oscar-worthy films.
I just needed to tell my two Oscar story when the guy looks at me and was like,
you've held two
at the same time.
Oh wow!
But he was like, nobody holds both. Nobody holds both of them. It was like either your ego's off the scale or you're just a knob. And I'm thinking it's probably the second one.
Anyway,
right, okay.
Let's talk visual puns though. Okay, so my favourite visual puns, duck matches.
Yes.
Absolutely hilarious. For those not in the UK, there's a well-known brand of matches called Swan matches, and they basically do duck matches. You've got electronics for dogs.
Mm-hmm.
The penguin pulls off the shelf, and also then you've got Crime and Punishment by Fido Dostoevsky that Gromit reads in. I mean, just all those,
all
Dog
those
Bites
little
Man,
things that
all
have
the,
been put in. Yeah.
All the stuff. If you just kind of pause on all the newspapers that you ever see in Wallace and Gromit, there's stuff going on.
There is. Right. Okay. So
it's just. And then the Thunderbirds. Obviously, we're a podcast that originally started doing Thunderbirds. The Thunderbirds thing in a close shave is just delightful. You know.
Oh, yeah.
I
mean, it starts with the first film when his garden folds back and the cabbages are there and they fall down the hole, just like Thunderbird.
You know, it's Thunderbird 1. Yeah.
1. Well,
Thunderbird 1 comes out.
Thunderbird
the pool.
1.
Yeah.
Okay. So, yes, the everyone loves it's the chicken thing, but always my favourite character, and he's got even less facial expression, is the cooker thing. The droid.
Oh, the cooker! Robot. The cooker robot in the first is delightful. Film.
It's incredibly detailed, so well made, it makes no sense, and it's brilliant. It's just... Right, okay, now this
and all
is
he
what
wants to do is go skiing. It's just...
But this is what I mentioned last time. This is the crossover. This droid appears in, and I've written this down, Star Wars, right?
No.
The droid from Grandy Out is in Star Wars, an episode called Visitors, Series 2, I think it's Tales of the Jedi, which was made by Aardman. Series 2, Episode 4, called I Am Your Mother. The droid is in the background of one of the shops.
Oh, this is this new Disney Plus series that's been on in the last few years, where there's a whole animated thing.
It's all in different styles of animation. If you are even remotely interested in this animation, and you're not going to hold Star Wars up to be some sort of religion, then this is for you.
Oh, right? I need to watch it.
There's some extremely weird Japanese stuff going on, which is just superb. If you like French animation, it's for you. It preaches. It spoke straight to my soul. Anyway, that droid is in Star Wars.
Oh,
so although we've got the whole,
now.
and I'll send you the details of exactly where to find it, because there's a screen grab. If you just Google it, it's there.
Yeah,
and you're like, whoa, right?
But you know that he was originally going to do a whole Mos Eisley cantina on the moon.
Yeah,
and he got to Aardman, and they were like, cut that bit. You're never going to finish it if you just have that. And it's so much. It's such a better film for just being that minimal thing. And that's what I was as I was watching all three of them. It's weird because the world, particularly for us Northerners, is so familiar. You know, I grew up for the first 9 years of my life in a northern terrace. You know,
all the streets around my way looked like that. Yeah,
you know,
well, not quite, but yeah.
So that the model making is
just
it's just amazing. You know, the model making is just amazing. But you're kind of like, I know this world, I live in this world, and yet there are no people in it. You know, the only three characters you see in the Wrong Trousers are Wallace Gromit and Feathers McGraw. The only characters you see in A Close Shave are Wallace Gromit, Wendelene, Sean, all the other sheep, and Preston. You know,
and Sean's become a massive thing as well.
Well, he's become his own thing.
Yeah.
But the rest of the world is hinted at just through the visuals and the sound design. You know, like Feathers McGraw is still on the run from the police. You know, and it's all hinted at with sirens and lights and everything. You know, but the world that we're part of is just these characters, which I guess makes sense because you know.
If you don't have to animate it,
animating
don't do
the
it.
design, you know, just
Oh, right, okay. So there's a bit where Gromit's welding, and I'm always jealous of this moment, right? Because, right, what it is there's a guy filming in real time a plasticine model and a sparkler, but because there's animation either side of it, you go, oh yeah, he's welding. But what you're actually watching is a locked off shot of someone with a sparkler.
No, you're joking.
Because the sparks are there. You watch it back and you go, oh yeah, that day they broke early for lunch because they'd shot 10 seconds. But unless the camera moves, it's got to be. It's the only way you would film something that practically. They might have shot loads of
they
different.
Could just overlay it afterwards with an optical processor.
Well, they could, but why bother? All right, you might melt the plasticine.
I'm gonna have to look at. I'm gonna have to look at it again.
But it's so that I love those cheats and things like that. So you know what? This is so English. This is so northern. It's Bristol as well. But it's so beautifully perfect, and it's such a massive part of our lives as well.
It is.
I'm really so glad you brought it up and recommended it, because watching the one with the penguin, as it became known in the house where I was just. Oh, you would watch it on a loop over and over again, and it was so good.
And
I
love the fact that like the comedy, the comedy wins.
Yeah.
Right. So they go to the moon. Okay, that's ridiculous. Because I was saying last week. I've chosen something that's sort of science fiction, but it's fantasy, right? Because
but they can breathe on the moon.
Yeah,
and it's made of cheese.
And it's made of cheese.
Yeah.
But the primary driver of everything is this funny, right? So for the chase at the end of The Wrong Trousers, the geography of the house just goes. You just have to kind of go with it and go. They're in this kind of comedy space. That's the house, and just the kind of like the picking up the bits of train track, and they happen to be the right shape to weave through the table legs and round the corner, and it's as good as the speeder chase in Jedi. It's that level of brilliance. Yeah. Funny. Oh, and I've met the guy who did the Steadicam for the speeder chase in Return of the Jedi, but that's another story.
Nice. Sorry, that is another story that I will be wanting to hear.
That's another story. But just the whole
But
we've just been locked in a cupboard, threatened by a penguin with a gun, and Wallace is like, "You'll break my wardrobe." It's so funny.
It's brilliant, but the stealing of the breaking at the museums all good. But right, okay, that's Aardman money. They've got the money and the success that they've made a great first film. But I always come back to there's tracking shots in the first film. There are camera moves. At no point when we were at university did anyone go, "Do you want to move the camera? It's an animation." You're like, "What? Moving the camera? Are you mental?"
No. So my final A-level DT project was and it failed. I didn't complete it. In electronics was a stepper motor tripod head.
Oh, there you go then.
Because I wanted to be able to move a camera, because I don't know. I clearly come across the idea of motion control, and I love the idea of motion control. The fact that you can kind of do all these separate passes, and you can program on the computer to do the same thing over and over again, and then you composite them all together. But just the idea that you could animate the camera, I had that idea, and obviously when I did CGI, you could very easily animate the camera. But I love that, and I did. A few years ago, I used to watch this YouTube channel called Film Riot. And they used to set what they called the Monday Challenge, and it was do a thing and post it on YouTube and label it with our thing, and we'll pick a prize. And one week they were like, do a chase, and I was like, I'm going to do a car chase, and I'll send this to you because I think you'd love to see it. And it was a 30-second Lego car chase with camera moves.
Nice.
And the way I did the camera moves, literally, I had the camera on a table, and I had a sheet with lines on that I'd already marked out what the camera was going to be, and I moved the camera on a piece of paper, and I slid it along in line with all these marks, so it would kind
the
of
stepper
accelerate
motor
up
was
and
just the piece of paper. It
was just me doing it manually, and it's got this lovely tracking shot of these two cars chasing each other.
That's
so
nice.
and like you say, I mean, it must come back to this, it must come back to the fact that I saw Wallace and Gromit at the age of 9 for the first time, and it was, and it did, and there's so much stuff in it that I just had no idea how it was done, and I can watch it now and I go, I can see how you did that. Okay, and one of the most iconic, I'm getting very excited and waving my hands now. Yeah, one of the most iconic sounds, the trousers, right?
Yeah,
just that the piston, sound design.
Yeah.
Just the piston and the clanging on the roof, and it just, and the music. How's
exactly right. Okay, now obviously we're pushed for time this week, so I'm gonna have to gonna have to stop because I want to talk forever about these things, and you know what, we might come back to them at some point. We might. Okay, so
spot the Doctor Who actor.
Well, it's quite easy this time. There's one, and he was.
No, there's two.
There's two. What?
Anyway,
hang on.
Wendoline.
Oh,
anyway,
right.
Do Peter Sallis first. Go on.
Ice Warriors.
Yes, and he would have been in Enlightenment if there hadn't been strikes in season 20.
Right, that makes sense. Yeah.
But yes, and then Wendoline, Anne Reid, who of course was
Was she the old lady who I always keep thinking, is that the old lady? Anne Reid was the vampire lady.
She was the Well, so ironically, she was Nurse Crane in Curse of Fenric, where she got eaten by vampires, and then in New Who, she was in Smith & Jones as a vampire.
Yes. Yes.
And here she is as a lovely wool
also
rustling
in
lady.
The Dinner Ladies, which is one of the greatest sitcoms of all time.
And she gets a pair of shears stabbed in her in Hot Fuzz.
Ah, Hot Fuzz. I've not seen that for a very long time.
And as I said, if Peter Hawkins had been the voice of Gromit, you'd still have a full house of Doctor Who
But
actors.
then we'd be here all evening listing Dalek stories.
Yes, we would. We would.
Now.
And then, as we mentioned, Bob Baker co-wrote the two best ones.
Who also created,
K9 and Omega,
Yeah.
co-wrote some great Doctor Who stories.
Okay, so this is the bit where I tell you what we're doing next time.
What are we doing next, Michael?
Right, now, okay, I want to go through this list until I find one you've not seen.
Okay.
Okay? Have you seen Spirited Away?
Yes.
Have you seen Nausicaa, Valley of the Wind?
No.
Have you seen Howl's Moving Castle?
No. I think the only Miyazaki that I've seen is Spirited Away.
Right, okay. Nausicaa's just too dark. Okay, we're doing Howl's Moving Castle.
Okay.
Right. Now, but I when you had that list, because I spoke to my daughter, because we're huge fans, and that's where it comes from, is that love of that. Because you brought up my nomination. My original plan was to do some crappy 1970s TV, right? But you brought up animation, and I went, oh my God, I love animation. Why am I not doing more animation? And I went, I'm going to do something new, but I want to do something that you've not seen so that I can bring something new to you.
Yeah. Okay.
And we'd seen Nausicaa it's the first one they ever make, and it's not strictly speaking Studio Ghibli. It's the one that they get the cash to make Studio Ghibli. Nausicaa is quite dark. It's a good film. It's a superb film, but I thought a little bit more mainstream. So I got together with Verity and we made a list of what we should do. So the first one was Spirited Away. If you'd not seen that, we'd just go straight in with Spirited Away.
I have seen Spirited Away.
It's a cracking movie. We could do that. But I thought, no, we'll do that. And then I thought Nausicaa's great, but no. Third on the film, Howl's Moving Castle, admittedly based on a book, which we can do another time, which I'm now going to read. In fact, to be fair, I'm about a tenth of the way through it. I'll read that so I can bring it. But yeah, Howl's Moving Castle. If you don't own it, I'll post it to you. It's on Netflix. You can get that. It's really not a problem. It's only
don't currently have access to Netflix, so yes.
I shall get you. I've got it on DVD. I'll send it your way. No problem.
So that will be October's episode. Before any of you hear this, Michael and I will see each other in person at Hooverville, and so. But yes, I will say au revoir at this point until I see him then, and he will say as ever,
"Be seeing you."
That was the Tin Dog Podcast. Available on Spotify, iTunes, Acast, Stitcher, and wherever good podcasts are found. Get early access to content by subscribing to the Tin Dog Podcast YouTube channel. You can support the show at patreon.com/tindog. Contact the show on Twitter at Tin Dog Podcast or email tin-dog@hotmail.co.uk. All of the things discussed are the intellectual property of others. No infringement is intended. The Tin Dog Podcast is a founder member of the Doctor Who Podcast Alliance.